The night air was thick with a damp chill. Leaves crunched under my feet as I approached the old crematorium. Its walls were blackened, charred from decades of smoke and neglect. Windows, broken and grimy, reflected nothing but shadows. A rusted gate creaked as I pushed it open. The smell of ash lingered, stale and suffocating. I stepped inside, the wooden floor groaning under each cautious footfall. The silence was absolute, yet it pressed against my ears, heavy and suffocating. A sudden cold breeze swept through, carrying a faint whisper. I paused. The whisper grew louder, forming shapes in the darkness. It was not wind, it was a voice, low and hollow, speaking words I could not understand. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. I moved forward, guided by the faint light from a broken skylight. The walls seemed to pulse, shadows stretching unnaturally toward me. I reached the main chamber. Rows of stone shelves lined the walls, empty but stained with old soot. In the center, an ancient furnace sat, its door cracked open as if inviting me in. A faint humming began to echo, vibrating through my chest. I felt my heartbeat quicken, every nerve on edge. The humming twisted into words, chanting something I could not place. I stepped closer, drawn by a force I did not understand. Then, from deep within the furnace, a sudden sound burst forth. It was a scream, but not human. It rattled my bones and filled my ears with agony. The walls shivered as if responding to it. I tried to step back, but my legs refused to obey. Another sound followed, soft at first, then growing louder. It was the sound of footsteps, pacing behind me. I dared not turn around. The air was alive with whispers, cries, and laughter. Each sound clawed at my mind, pulling fragments of memories I had not known I had. The furnace trembled as if something inside was moving. A shape emerged from the shadows, flickering and unstable, like smoke given form. It raised a hand toward me, and the chanting grew louder. The smell of burning intensified, not from fire, but from something older, deeper. I felt a pressure on my chest, as if invisible hands pressed against me. My vision blurred, yet I could see the shape more clearly now. Its face was hollow, eyes empty yet full of intent. A voice rose above all others, echoing from every corner of the room. It called my name, slow and deliberate. I could feel it reaching into my mind, probing memories I tried to forget. I stumbled back, almost falling into the furnace. The floor beneath me shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The chanting became a roar, a chorus of forbidden sounds that made the hair on my neck stand straight. Something grabbed my arm, cold and unyielding, pulling me toward the furnace. I struggled, heart hammering, but the force was too strong. The shadows twisted around me, forming hands, faces, mouths that screamed in silence. I realized then that the furnace was not empty. Inside, something waited, something alive in a way that defied reason. It whispered promises, threats, and secrets all at once. I felt myself being drawn closer, every instinct screaming to run, yet my body would not move. The humming returned, but this time it was my name, repeated over and over. A sudden jolt of heat licked my skin, searing yet not burning. I tried to look away, but my eyes were locked on the shadows. Something began to emerge from the furnace, a figure shaped from smoke and ember. Its voice rose above the cacophony, clear and terrifying. It spoke words that seemed to pierce my soul, words that should not exist. The floor beneath me cracked, and I felt the world tilt, the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolving. The figure hovered above the furnace, shifting and flickering like smoke caught in a storm. Its eyes glowed faintly, ember red, burning with a malice I could not comprehend. The chanting around me intensified, now coming from every corner of the room, every crack and shadow. It was not just the figure that moved, the walls themselves seemed alive, bending and stretching in impossible angles. I felt the weight of centuries pressing down on me, the air thick with despair and decay. My legs finally obeyed, forcing me to stumble backward, but the room had changed. The door through which I had entered was gone, replaced by a wall of black stone, slick with something that smelled like charred flesh. Panic surged through me, sharp and overwhelming. I turned toward the furnace again, and the figure was closer. Its voice, now unmistakably human yet wrong, like a melody played in reverse, reached my ears. It whispered secrets that clawed at my memory, revealing things I had never known I feared. The heat from the furnace grew, wrapping around me, a suffocating presence. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block the sounds, but they penetrated every barrier. I could feel them crawling under my skin, coiling around my nerves, infecting my thoughts. The shadows around the room lengthened, twisting into shapes I could barely recognize. Faces appeared in the darkness, eyes hollow, mouths moving though no sound came out. The chanting shifted into a rhythm, like the beating of a heart, slow and deliberate. My pulse synchronized with it, my chest rising and falling as if compelled by some unseen force. The figure raised a hand, and the shadows obeyed, stretching toward me like fingers made of smoke. I stumbled, falling to the floor, my hands scraping against the cold stone. The furnace roared, and suddenly a blast of heat struck me, forcing me onto my knees. From inside the furnace, a voice screamed, layered with countless others, a symphony of anguish and fury. It was calling me, promising knowledge, power, and terror all at once. I wanted to run, but the room had no exits, only walls that pulsed and breathed. The shadows began to merge, forming a massive figure that towered above me, a grotesque echo of the one that hovered over the furnace. Its eyes were pits of darkness, and I felt myself drawn into them, as if falling into the void itself. The chanting became unbearable, 1,000 voices all speaking in languages I could not know yet somehow understood. It was telling me my fears, my regrets, my sins, things I had never spoken aloud. The figure leaned closer, its face now inches from mine. Its mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, and the forbidden sounds poured out, filling the room with a resonance that shook my bones. My vision blurred, and I felt my mind stretch, tear, and fold under the weight of what I heard. I tried to speak, to call out, but no sound came from my throat. The air around me seemed to vibrate with anticipation, each echo of the figure's voice causing the walls to shiver. Suddenly, the furnace glowed, brighter than fire should ever glow, lighting the entire chamber in a sickly, unnatural red. The shadows recoiled for a moment, hissing as though burned by the light, only to surge forward again, stronger than before. I realized then that the furnace was not just a source of heat, it was alive, a heart beating with centuries of anger and sorrow. The figure pointed toward the furnace, and I understood, in a terrifying instant, that it wanted me to step inside. I resisted, every instinct screaming to flee, yet my body moved forward, as if guided by invisible strings. The closer I got, the more I could hear the forbidden sounds, words and melodies that should not exist, each one etching fear into my soul. The shadows swirled around my feet, trying to trip me, claw at me, drag me down into the blackened floor. I stumbled, hands brushing against the furnace's edge, and the heat was immediate, searing, yet it did not burn. It penetrated deeper, into my bones, into my mind, revealing visions I could not escape. I saw faces of those who had come before me, trapped within the furnace, their eyes hollow, screaming silently. The figure reached out with a hand made of smoke and ash, touching my shoulder. A jolt ran through me, and suddenly, I was no longer in the crematorium. I stood in a void, black and infinite, the whispers now surrounding me completely. The forbidden sounds became a torrent, waves of anguish and terror crashing over me. I could feel them tearing at my memories, unearthing fears I had buried long ago. A voice, clearer than the others, spoke directly into my mind, commanding, demanding, offering a choice I could not refuse. It promised power beyond imagination, knowledge of the unknown, and the release of all pain, but only at a cost I could not comprehend. The shadows from the crematorium surrounded me in this void, their forms twisting, merging, and multiplying. I could sense the furnace beneath me, its heartbeat echoing in my chest, guiding me toward an impossible decision. The figure hovered above, waiting, patient, immortal. Its whisper cut through all other sounds, and I understood the truth: this place had never been abandoned. It had been waiting for me, and for everyone who dared to listen to the forbidden sounds. I felt a pull, stronger than gravity, dragging me toward the furnace's opening, toward the inferno that promised both revelation and annihilation. My mind screamed in resistance, yet my body moved, drawn inexorably forward. The shadows lunged, the forbidden sounds screamed, and the figure's eyes glowed brighter than anything I had ever seen. Every step toward the furnace felt like an eternity, every heartbeat a drumbeat of terror. Then, the furnace door shifted, wide enough to swallow the void itself, revealing the core of the darkness. The forbidden sounds coalesced into a single, piercing note, vibrating through reality, through my soul, through everything I had ever known. It was neither music nor speech, yet it was both, and it demanded my attention, my surrender, my existence. I stood on the threshold, feeling the heat of 1,000 souls, the weight of the centuries, the gaze of the figure above. And then, I stepped forward. The world tore apart, not with fire, but with sound, a forbidden, unbearable, beautiful, and horrifying sound that would never leave me. I was inside the furnace now, the shadows swallowing the room behind me. The figure remained, watching, waiting, patient as eternity itself. I realized then that the crematorium was not just a place of death. It was a gateway, a sentinel, and a trap, alive with forbidden sounds that no one was meant to hear. And as the furnace closed around me, I understood that I was no longer a visitor. I was part of the sound, part of the shadows, part of the crematorium itself. The whispers promised that the next soul would come, drawn by the same curiosity and the same foolish courage. And they would hear what I had heard, and feel what I had felt, and perhaps, like me, they would never return. The forbidden sounds echoed endlessly, carrying my name, my fear, and my surrender to every corner of the night. And the crematorium waited, the furnace fell silent. The shadows slowly retreated, folding back into the corners of the room, leaving the chamber cold and still. The forbidden sounds faded, replaced by a deep, hollow quiet, the kind that presses against the ears and the chest. I opened my eyes, though I was not entirely sure if they had ever closed. The air was heavy with ash and dust, but the suffocating presence had lifted, leaving only a memory of its weight. The figure was gone, but I could feel its gaze lingering, distant yet impossible to ignore. I stumbled toward the doorway, each step unsteady, as if the world itself had shifted. Outside, the night had not changed. The wind whispered through the trees, indifferent and calm. I looked back once at the old crematorium. It stood quiet, abandoned in appearance, but I knew better. Its walls held the echoes of the forbidden sounds, and within it, something eternal waited. Something patient, watching, and hungry for the next curious soul. I took a deep breath of the cold night air, tasting freedom, yet sensing the remnants of fear etched into my very bones. I turned away and walked into the darkness, carrying the memory of what I had seen, and what I had heard, knowing it would never truly leave me. The crematorium stood silently behind me, a monument to the forbidden, guarding its secrets, its whispers, and its shadows. And the night continued, as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. Some sounds are meant to remain unheard, some doors forever unopened, and some places never entered again. The forbidden sounds would wait, patient and eternal, for the next traveler brave enough, or foolish enough, to listen.